Here via Zoom.
Okay. Hackbarth.
Here via Zoom.
Schuster.
Here by Zoom.
Haig. Okay. And Dirk Sluby did call in. Oh, there's Robin.
Hi,
Hi.
There we go.
I am here via Zoom as well.
Perfect. And then I did talk to Dirk Sluby today, and she said she was not going to make it, so she is absent and excused.
All right, thank you. I'm searching for an approval of minutes from the previous meeting on December 6th.
You have quorum, right?
I will motion.
Motion by Haig to approve the minutes as listed. Is there a second?
This is Linda. I will second.
Second by Hackbarth. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
you may want to have a roll call vote on all these because the clerk can't see the votes.
I was
Okay.
just about to say that I'm glad we're on the same wavelength. So yes, Sarah, for each vote, we'll be doing it by roll call just to make things a little easier on yourself
Okay.
and the public.
Got it. Thank you very much.
New business, continued discussion on employee recruitment and retention strategies. Administrator Donner, I'll let you begin with that one.
Sure. I don't know. Before we get started, is there any other protocol we need to be aware of here? I know we heard some feedback on somebody's line here earlier. Any particular instructions everybody needs to be aware of, Nate, as we handle this meeting via Zoom?
I'll try to handle some of the feedback as it pops up. I'm just in the process of trying to share the meeting agenda to everybody's screen as well.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead with Mr. Vice Chairman.
you might want to advise the participants to mute their microphone until they wish to speak. It stops people from speaking over and back feedback.
An excellent suggestion. Thank you. Unless you are currently presenting or speaking, including committee members, please mute yourselves in order to mitigate any feedback.
Okay, so just kind of the lead in, the items on the agenda tonight are mainly follow up to things that we at least we had more lengthy discussion perhaps at the December meeting of the HR committee. So I don't know how much more to say than that. I guess the introductory memo kind of outlined what those were going to be as they appear on the agenda. Earlier today, we did, based on some, I guess, events over the holidays with some exposures and people developing some symptoms of illness, I guess we thought we should revisit our contagious temporary illness policy. So that we added that to the agenda here earlier today. So I guess having said that, again, we attached again our menu of benefits and so forth that we talked about last time, just kind of for reference again. But one thing that we talked about relative to retention was trying to take a look at our turnover statistics. So there was a table that was prepared by Sherry and I, and as I look at that today, I see there are some errors in that. So we'll cover what those are. I don't know if we can show that chart on the screen for everybody. How does that work?
I'm working on it as we speak.
So what we did was look at years 2012 through 2021 and kind of looked at first of all, the retirements, and then the employees that just decided to separate, quit, if you will, from the village, and then also listed those. I guess there were 2 that were terminated. Not naming names or anything, just kind of looked at positions. And we didn't, I guess, compile the statistics necessarily on how many in any department. I think overall, if you look at the retirements, it mainly was in the probably more in the Department of Public Works area and Utilities area than anywhere. I guess just a note on the retired positions, I guess across the board, I think the top 3 columns did not get added into those bottom line numbers. So if you look at those retired positions, the total number over those years should actually be 9. Number of employees that quit should be 16. And then net of the employees that moved to SAFER based on the creation of SAFER and those employees leaving the village and going to SAFER. That far right hand column instead of 18 should be 27. So again, this chart would need to be updated. I know one thing that was trying to compare this to how Wausau had done it. We had looked at their HR committee packet, I think from October, and they were looking at some of their turnover statistics, maybe trying to look at the reasons that people may have left. I think the focus of our discussion was maybe on our fear, maybe that the wage issue, compensation issue is the primary factor, that it may become more primary as time goes by. And if I were to at least give my 2 cents worth on why these different people left employment here over this time, I would, I could probably think of maybe 2 where it may have been a higher priority, maybe 1 where it was probably the highest. Otherwise, I think reasons for separating, for quitting, are more related to I don't know, desire to move to a higher responsibility in another location, say another job somewhere where they had better opportunity, more opportunity for advancement, moved out of the area even, so things of that nature. They were really not necessarily pay related. I suppose pay related from the perspective they may have hit a ceiling here from that matter, but I don't have the say the number there, but I guess we could certainly do a little more drill down on this with a little more time. We got distracted a little bit on our looking at our illness policy here today, so I didn't really sit down and look at this with anybody, as we have had a few other people out of the office, some of the directors today, myself included, not probably at 100% right now. So I don't know what more to say about the turnover statistics. I guess of the 27 people, of course, 1/3 of them have been retirements, 2 terminations. So I suppose we'd want to look at reasons other people left. I know better opportunity, maybe a chance to work maybe less in a hands-on environment and more in a administrative role were some reasons in a few positions as I go down through the list. So I'm not sure what more we need to say about that. I don't know if any committee members may have some questions or suggestions on what we do further here to give them a better better handle on or what we should be say evaluating or analyzing on this.
Sure, this is Linda. It's nice to see this. I think what this is showing is that your averaging turnover percentage is about 10%. So that's nice to see this the year after year. It doesn't get real high except for that move to safer, which I don't really know what that means. So you don't have to explain it.
Okay.
But it doesn't look like you've really exceeded 10%. So that's, I think in my opinion, that's pretty solid.
Okay, so even in this, owing to the fact that we are a pretty small organization in the scheme of things, I would think.
Linda, I would echo those comments. I did that same calculation, and I know, Keith, as you look at the scale of your organization, if you put it into a percentage wise, 10% is really not a bad number. It's a fairly healthy number, honestly, especially when you break it down to what you said a third is retirements. So your actual turnover number is less than 10%. So that's really actually pretty good. So I think, just moving forward, if you can just kind of monitor some of the trends as to why people are leaving, and then obviously focus on the succession planning for those retirements that you have coming up in the future. But it doesn't look like you have there's no trending telling us that you have a problem, a major problem.
Yeah, well, okay, well, and I guess probably that would be my, at least my perspective as well, that we don't have a problem, but maybe some other people see it differently, and it's good to hear, I guess, that
But with that, Keith,
sorry?
But with that, the other piece we've talked about is, as we're talking about compensation, we still want to make sure that, we're paying our people to market, and that compensation analysis that we do on a regular basis is going to be important as you move forward to stay ahead of, and be proactive.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't want to, I guess, skirt over there or discount that. That's certainly something we want to talk about further as we go through the year here, or get into the year. So, all right. Thank you for those comments.
Keith, can I ask a quick question? It's Michael.
Sure.
So Robin or Linda, what number or percentage would you say is where you should start being concerned? Is it 20%, 30%?
That's a great question. I think looking at this data, if you start creeping up, we expect increased turnover this year and into next year. That's an expectation. So if you start seeing all of a sudden the first of the quarter or 6 months in that you're already at 10% turnover based off of January numbers, then I would start getting concerned.
Sure. Yeah, I guess, like the number of employees listed is the entire staff, but, 10 of those 40 are, essentially similar positions. So if we had three of those, 3 out of 40, you say, oh, it's less than 10%. But if that was actually 3 out of 10, then it's like, whoa, that's 30%. So just trying to.
Right. Then you'd be concerned, especially when you drill it down by departments like that. Absolutely.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah, and to Linda's point, there's no right or wrong turnover. You just need to figure out what's a healthy number for your organization. And what I've seen is you can really get some good data by industry. So there's probably some good data by public sector that we could be looking at to at least compare ourselves and do some benchmarking externally if we were interested. It may not hurt to have that data as we move forward and, just review some of these metrics on a, maybe a, annual basis.
Mhm.
Can I enter in?
I presume so. Is this committee member Schuster speaking? Or
Yes,
asking?
well,
Okay.
I
You
just wanted
recognize?
to add, we really can't include retirements, or can we include the safer people? Those were things that just, they're just not part of any reason that people left. So I guess I want to just say that I don't see our numbers being outrageous. I think it's pretty normal.
I think we were netting out the safer.
Right.
Maybe I'm wrong, Linda, I think, but you're, because you had said you weren't sure what the reason for that was, but yes, I was 9 retirements out of 27 and 16, actually 18 other, if you will, so.
Correct.
So that was the number I was working off of, just for clarity. Okay. Any other comments or questions on that?
No,
Okay.
Nope, not for me.
All right.
Me neither.
So, Nate, would you like me to just move on to the next item there?
Yes.
So number 7 was we were asked to find some language on a proposal for paid parental leave.
Mhm.
For a paid parental leave policy. I think having found some general guidelines, also there's also the guidelines we found actually on the Liberty Mutual policy. So things I saw was that if there are policies like this put in place, any additional paid parental leave runs concurrently with family medical leave. So it's not an addition to, as I see it, both in the Liberty policy and I think in the proposed language that we found. I guess I wasn't sure what number of hours or days was the target here, or the thought from the request that was looked at here. My understanding is that the proposal would be there would be some additional paid leave over and above what a employee would have as their normal PTO during the year to be applied to this paid parental leave. So I don't know, Sherry was also taking a look at some of this stuff. Were there other questions you had, Sherry, before we, I guess, turn this open for other comment?
No, I don't think so, but I think that SHRM policy, if I remember right, I was just looking at it again, but I thought it just covered like 4 weeks.
Or a fill in the blank kind of thing, right? 4 weeks, 2 weeks, whatever the
Yeah,
number was.
well, maybe that's what it was. I don't know why I was thinking 4 weeks, but
I think that's the difference between the short-term disability, the gap between when your short-term disability kicks in.
that must be where I'm getting the 4 weeks then.
So, but after our meeting last time, Sherry, I know you found that maybe our short-term disability coverage isn't quite what we thought it was, or am I stating that incorrectly. Oh,
Sherry?
Sherry?
Hey, are you there?
Yep.
Yeah,
We're
Okay.
here.
No, yeah, Keith, as far as the income continuation, they include the elimination period in determining the benefit that they pay out. And so
And
I,
what's that
so there's no
period like?
benefit. Oh, go ahead.
yeah, and so that elimination period is 30, 60, or 90 days. And with the employer paying, both the employee and employer share it 90 days. And then if the employee wants the 60 or 30-day elimination period, then they pay more towards the premium.
So that's disability leave, right? So that's going to cover your, if we're talking about parental leave, short-term disability is going to cover the female who is disabled from giving birth, if they have the 30, 60, or 90 days, correct?
Correct. And with the income continuation, and I don't know how they determine it, you know, I would assume it of what exactly they need off for. So for example, if it's maternity leave, I believe they only pay towards the benefit for 6 weeks.
Yeah, that's pretty common for a vaginal birth. If there's a C-section involved, it typically is 8 weeks, but again, I don't know what your policy says. But irregardless, you've got, we're talking about paid parental leave. So one gender is going to be eligible for short-term disability based off of all the elimination, and the other gender is not eligible for that because they don't have a disability to collect income replacement. So I think what we need to figure out here is what you want to provide to your staff who are having children as time off, irregardless at one point of your disability leave, because it sounds like there's quite an elimination period. So if you're going to give 4 weeks to the male who doesn't have to apply for income replacement or pay for income replacement, I would think you'd want to do the same thing for a female. Does that make sense? And maybe I'm missing something.
Linda, I would agree with you. I think that's what we're trying to accomplish, right?
Well, that's a question I think for Chairman Feeney, as this was kind of an idea that asked for us to look into. So,
Could I
Yes,
just check?
that's the goal we're trying to accomplish.
And I can also add that through the income continuation program, there are no benefits payable for the spouse or for the father of the baby.
Right, which would make sense because it's basically a health condition tied to the disability
Right.
income replacement.
Right.
And added to that, that wouldn't cover adoption, if I'm understanding that correctly.
I think your desire was that it would cover adoption as well as a natural birth in the family.
Yes, but short-term disability would not cover adoption.
Correct. They would have the time off under your current policy in the handbook, which mirrors a Family Medical Leave Act policy. The state and federal guidelines However, it would not be paid at this time. So that's what you're looking for, right?
Mhm.
Is that subsidy of compensation.
Right.
Okay.
Chairman Feeney, could I enter one thought?
Go ahead, Mr. Schuster.
My only concern about all this is you've picked something that Liberty is doing. Every company is probably trying to do something to keep their employees. I'm a little remiss at doing things what I'm calling one at a time. I really think we ought to be deciding a package thing if we want to add one or two or three things. I mean, every company, if we go give what every other company gives, we'll be giving away an awful lot. Do you understand what I'm saying? I'm just not so comfortable with doing one thing at a time. We ought to come up with a package and agree on.
I introduced this before before understanding the full, or before we had a discussion of the full scope of different the full scope of potential benefits or incentives or other things, which is why this was put in as a standalone. I would have no problem rolling this into a package. My thought process is we did have some outstanding questions and desire for reflections on how long this wanted to be. So as soon as we agree on that and we decide which other things we wanted to roll together as a new incentives package, I'm completely fine with that.
Yeah, I just don't want to do it piecemeal. And I'm not sure this proposal that you're presenting, is that something that, say, 60, 70% of the private sector and or public sector is doing? I just don't want to start adding this and that and the next thing, and somebody will come up a month from now and say, well, this company does this. That's my only concern. Okay, I'm done.
Well, if I could ask a question here. I mean, it's fine for us to try to come up with a whole package of things, but I don't know if are we ever going to come to a point where we have covered everything that may come up. I guess philosophically, is this something that we want to do? I mean, I know we've talked a little bit about this amongst ourselves as staff. I mean, and the old school, we made accommodations, we figured out what we needed to do, and we prepared for what was going to happen when a child came into our family. I guess I'd take the hard line, we'd say, okay, that's what we do. But I know that the world is changing. So I guess my question, as you've started to ask here, Mr. Schuster, would be what are companies like Greenhick and Bone and Joint Clinic doing in this regard? Are they entertaining this kind of thing or not?
And that's really my question. And I would go much broader than that. Not two companies, but is this what 50, 60, 70% of all employers are doing now? We gotta stay competitive, but I guess that's my real question. Is this really something that most employers are doing, and should we get on the bandwagon, or are we jumping the gun?
Sure. I think it's gonna depend on the company. You're right. I mean, just hearing from me and Robin about what our companies do isn't gonna dictate. Our sizes are different. You do have to consider that full package and what is going to help to retain your workforce. When you're recruiting and doing interviewing, I don't think a question of any candidate is, what are your leave benefits? They might look at a total package of it, but they're going to look at the total package when you're being recruited. Now, from an internal perspective, you value your employees, you value that they're having babies. So from a bone and joint perspective, we follow family medical leave for both mom and dad for time off. So what's different is the mom is disabled, and therefore they're unable to work for a period of, they're incapacitated to work. The male is able to work, but they're also allowed time off to bond with their child and help mom out at home or do whatever. We don't have any additional pay provided to them. They have to use their paid time off for time off with their child. So we don't have a separate paid parental leave policy. We just follow the FMLA, and they're able to substitute accrued PTO or take the leave time unpaid for the male. If the female is eligible under our short-term disability policy, our waiting period is much shorter. It's 7 days before they start to pay, and they get 60% of their salary.
Yeah, Linda, our degree tech is similar to yours, where both genders are eligible to qualify under FMLA for baby bonding time for up to the 12 weeks. Because we are unionized, our union employees do not receive any additional compensation for the birth of a child. In our office, though, it is a little bit different because we have that luxury and that ability to do that. I think it's either 3 or 5 days of pay at this time for baby bonding time for a male. When I was at the bank, though, we drastically changed this policy, and I actually did extensive research in this area. And this does seem to be the way many employers are going. You look at a lot of the companies that have a lot of young millennials working for them, like Target Corporate, some of those, a lot of retail, those types of organizations. Target sticks out in my mind because their leave policy is extremely generous. So when I was at the bank, we did change our policy, and we did go to I'm trying to remember, it was 4 or 8 weeks of paid time off for the birth of a child for both male and female. And we actually allowed our females to stack that on top of FMLA. We allowed them to use that additional time to transition back into the workforce as a result of getting acclimated to a new family type situation. So it does seem like a lot of employers that are employing some of the younger generation are going to this type of policy. And again, I think it comes back to our philosophy as an organization, as the Village of Weston. What are our core values? What's our philosophy when it comes to our employees and valuing their, considering them as family members? Is this something that we want to, sign up for? I wouldn't recommend we jump off the deep end and, go 8 weeks right out of the gate. But, maybe there's a happy medium in there somewhere.
Can you define a lot of employers?
When I did that research, I think we looked at, me and my HR team at the time, we grabbed analysis from probably 20, 25 employers, but they were pretty big companies because we did look more national than regional.
Okay, now answer my question. What did you mean by a lot?
Well, it was that 2025 employer sample size.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I think you're answering my question, which
Yeah, it was about 20 to
doesn't
25.
answer my question.
It was about 20 to 25 employers that we sampled to see what they were doing as far as their parental leave policies go. And, we kind of took the best of, what we found that matched our corporate philosophy and our values as an organization at that bank.
Okay.
Okay, so where do we go from here?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
this is Lauren. I think we're kind of losing the path. I hear talk about total package compensation, but I think we're trying to focus on employee retention and recruitment. I think the rest of our benefit package is actually pretty good. And I've heard that from Robin and from some of you people that are in the private sector. But I think we're trying to focus our retention and recruitment on issues that are important to, let's face it, most of us are, I'm older, and to me, some of these issues wouldn't be all that important, but to younger people, they are. So I see our focus to be on some of these issues that might keep people on, and not necessarily to revamp the entire benefits package.
Right. And it was just fortuitous timing that that these two things went together. So this was submitted with the spirit of working in or attempting to aid in employee retention, especially of younger employees. So that's really all I have to say about that. And then, is there more discussion, or would someone like to make a motion on this item?
Well, I guess we don't have really any way to assess the cost of this relative to what it would be now. I mean, I know there's, I guess there's the aspect of if someone has exhausted their PTO, but they do extend their leave to the maximum that FMLA would allow, which, what is that, 12 weeks? If there's a certain gap there that they're not getting paid, they're off the payroll for for the balance of that time. Let's say it's 6 out of the 12 weeks. So I suppose the village, there's a cost to the village for that person not being present here. Not only in dollars, but in some, productivity that's not being met, or we're bringing somebody temporary in to fill the gap. So that hasn't been part of the discussion. I guess that's the perhaps the cold-hearted view of it all, obviously.
Yeah, I think great discussions, all very good points. I think one of the options for consideration is to look at another short-term disability policy to see what kind of cost to narrow down that waiting period. And see what you're up against with that, and then back into, do you want to offer any additional paid parental leave for both genders? But I think that short-term disability policy is becoming not very competitive within the marketplace these days.
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead.
I think we're kind of stumbling around here. We don't have a specific number or number of weeks, days, how much this is going to cost us for us to make a motion on this without having something to point to is a little premature. Come up with something like, hey, 2 weeks comes out of your PTO, and 2 weeks comes, the village pays 2 weeks for up to 4 weeks. We don't have any specifics, and I would be very hard pressed, and I think most of the participants in this meeting would be hard pressed to come up with a motion that would make sense.
Okay. At the.
There's no
at the previous-
motion, but I would go along with that.
Yeah, Lauren, I would agree with you that I am not comfortable making a motion at this time because I don't know what the cost impact would be.
Agree.
Okay. At the previous HR committee meeting, there were 2 proposals. One was for 4 weeks of a standalone paid family leave time off, and then the other suggestion was from Vice Chair White with 2 weeks from the village and 2 weeks from employee PTO. So if I understood Trustee White's suggestion, it would just be essentially half and half.
Mr. Chairman, that's correct.
So-
However, we have to keep in mind if the employee does not have anything in the PTO bank, it's kind of a moot issue.
That's true. So then, in that, I guess my response to that in your proposal, Trustee White, would just be, then they only get the 2 weeks and that's it. So then, if the question is, do we have concrete numbers? I would like staff to come back and give us calculations and costs for those 2 proposals. One being the 4 weeks entirely from the village, and the other being 2 weeks from 2 weeks from the village and 2 weeks from employee PTO. Did I miss anything that other committee members would like included?
I wouldn't have a problem with that.
I think you're missing the suggestion of looking at a different short-term disability policy.
Okay.
So this is Sherry. I would agree with Linda that maybe we need to look at our short-term disability policy, because what we have in place for that right now is not the norm. And maybe we need to start there and then maybe move to looking at a parental leave policy. That's just my thought, and I thought that's what I heard Linda say.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman,
go ahead.
I think the suggestion of the clerk would, excuse me. I think the suggestion to look at our short-term disability, the time before it kicks in is a good idea, because if we develop something that only covers 4 weeks, and then they wind up with a 90-day or 60-day, whatever it is that the employee chooses, there's still that gap there.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, this is Sherry again, with the income continuation, the paid benefit is only 2 weeks. So it's a 6-week benefit, but you have your 30-day elimination period. So then you only get paid for 2 weeks.
Yeah, that is not a competitive policy.
Yeah.
Right.
Not at all.
So maybe that's where we need to start before we even move forward with a parental leave policy, and at least get that policy up to par and then go from there. That's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, I agree. I was pulling up some data. I obviously can't share it because it's paid information. This is healthcare focused on the state of Wisconsin. They do benefit surveys every year, and the average waiting period for benefits is, for sick time, is 7.9 days. And that's just healthcare though, so I don't have other industry data.
Yeah, and Linda, from my experience, both manufacturing and banking, I've never seen anything more than 7 days, honestly.
Yeah.
It's usually what I've seen between 5 and 7.
Mhm.
All right, so we do need a little more information before we can continue. A quick one, cough, you're right. So let's get all of that together along with the costs and potential circumstances under the original proposal and Trustee White's proposal for the following meeting, because as it is, we just don't have enough information.
Sure.
Anything else on that particular item? Okay, hearing nothing. Let's move on to item 8, modification of section 5.13 of Employee Handbook for clothing reimbursement for Public Works, Utility, and Park staff. Administrator Donner?
So this is a recommended change to the language in section 5.13 of the handbook, which describes our clothing reimbursement that we provide for those employees in public works, utilities, and parks for winter clothing and for boots. I can probably turn it over to Director Wadolski for any other detail here if you'd like to have more background on it. There's highlighted language that would change, and then on the I guess the third page of the attachment, the suggested language that would be recommended. So I guess before we go into that, I don't know, Michael, if you want to add anything here. I guess the thing, this is one of those things where based on utilization or need of specific items for the employees, they can choose their footwear, and we're not out there trying to find something that matches everybody. They turn in receipts for reimbursement. We would just make an adjustment here within the budget so that this does not have an impact to the overall budget, but there would be some adjustment within the uniform budget, and this clothing budget would be our proposal. So, Michael, do you have any comments you want to add on this?
No, I think you covered what I guess, yeah, we're looking to do, just looking at what costs employees are having for items that they were seeking reimbursement for. The reimbursement amount was not covering, the cost of what they're looking to get. So just trying to look at the overall budget and I guess maybe put the funds where it's going to be used, I guess, in a probably better manner. Really what all this is looking to do.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
Mr. Wadolski, I think you may want to make sure that you're spelling out the numbers, in particular where you have $300, you don't have the previous words. It says $195. You want to make sure that those are matched. That one right there.
That's me. I'll do that.
That's
Sherry-
you.
Sherry will take care of that.
Okay, thank you.
So, do you want us to read what the suggested languages are in section 5.13, or is that attachment sufficient?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
again, back to what I said earlier, I know we've got 3 or 4 items. Are we piecemealing? And have we looked at shall I say, comparables to other communities with these and the recommendations to follow.
I will defer to Director Wodolski.
I think we lost Michael.
Okay.
Did we? All right. I guess these are things that. Go ahead.
What is Director Osterbrink? Do you know if that number listed is fairly standard with neighboring organizations?
I'm not sure. I did not investigate the clothing allowances for other communities.
Okay. Thank you.
Director
we-
Wodolski is rejoining right now.
What was that?
Michael's rejoining right now. He should be back.
Okay.
I said a 3-3-0.
Mr. Schuster, I believe your camera is still on. Director, okay. Director Wodolski, Mr. Schuster had a question as to whether or not this is comparable to other communities in the area.
I think Keith had a conversation with the city of Merrill, where I think theirs is at, I forget, I think it was a little over 200 or around 200. I guess this is,
talk is actually with my
sorry,
right now.
got it.
We're doing.
So as Michael said, yes, we had, it's a, I think there are some communities that do make this reimbursement, others that don't. We have a uniform budget as well, and all we're proposing to do is substitute some of that money from the uniform budget and use it for an item that actually, when you look at the cost of the particular items we're trying to cover, doesn't really cover them to the level that they probably should be. So that's why we're proposing to increase this. If that makes sense. I don't mean to be inarticulate, but I sometimes can't help it. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes sense to me.
I'm just, again, it's, the number is, I don't have a basis for it. I want to give our employees what others are getting. But I just don't want to piecemeal and pick one from this community and one from that. And
Hey, Fred, this item didn't come from looking at other communities. It came strictly from looking at the receipts that our employees had for the boots, the bibs, the gear that they're buying, so that they are comfortable working out in the elements. And since I've been with the village for 11 years here, and the dollar amounts never changed, and the clothing and everything has gone up. And seeing that we had surplus area in our uniform budget, it just seemed like this was a good use of that money to make sure employees are buying the proper clothing, equipment to do their job.
okay, I would agree with that. You say it's coming out of the uniform budget. What about next year? This is an ongoing, I believe.
Correct. And our uniform's an ongoing budget line item too every year.
Right. So
Yep.
if you're going to increase it, it's going to be increased every year, correct? I mean, they're gonna get the
No.
$300 every year.
Correct, yeah. Just like the uniform cost is there every year.
And next year, maybe the uniform allowance won't be there.
I'm not sure if you're following the budget line item, probably for the past 10 plus years, has been around this, where am I finding it here? About $12,000. I mean, that's pretty much been in the budget for the past 10 years. So whether it's really how that money is being divided up, whether it's for the uniforms or it's for the clothing reimbursements. We found we were getting charged for a lot of pants, shorts, work shirts that many of the employees weren't wearing. So we kind of went through the inventory, turned in everything that wasn't being used. And we
Okay.
won't be hitting that line item. For the
Okay, I
uniforms.
understand. That explains it.
Okay.
All right, is there any more discussion on this particular item?
No, the only thing I would add is, I mean, if this hasn't changed in almost 10 years and the price of everything has gone up considerably, and if we want our people to be wearing appropriate PPE, especially in the winter, I would support it. And Michael, if you're seeing the receipts and this is the average cost you're seeing come through, that's what I'm understanding. That's where the number came from.
Yeah, I guess looking at, the cost of the steel toe boots and like a
Yeah,
pair of
steel
bibs.
toes are not cheap. They're going up all the time.
Yeah.
And are you seeing people not buy
I think the main thing is
clothing
people
every
maybe
year 'cause
don't,
feel they can't afford it?
yeah, or they don't maybe buy the highest quality. Some guy might buy, a pair of $80 boots, but then,
Sure.
come, June, it looks like they should be getting another pair. Whereas,
Right.
Somebody who buys a nice pair,
Yeah.
it can last them for the full year. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Is there a motion on this item?
I'll
Sure,
move that motion.
Okay,
I'll second. This is
Motion.
Linda.
motion by Schuster, second by Linda. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Or actually, I'm sorry, roll call vote.
Feeny,
Aye.
White,
Aye.
Hackbarth,
Aye.
Schuster,
Aye.
Haig.
Aye.
That's it.
All right, motion carries. Moving on.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Keith.
We're gonna continue. Okay, yeah, and so the next one is another proposed modification on the handbook related to the employee cell phone stipend. This is, I guess, related to this. There's a link to section 10.03 for the entire section on cell phones, but cut to the chase on this. There's a reimbursement that's provided to employees depending on their exempt or non-exempt status for having a phone that that doubles as personal use and also for village use. Generally, all exempt staff is required to have not only cell phone but smartphone capabilities internet connectivity. In those cases, reimbursement that is provided for is $50 a month. For the non-exempt staff, those that we had a need to be contacting on emergency basis, essentially all public works operations staff. Again, those positions are listed, but the current reimbursement rate on that is $20 a month. The proposal is that we increase the stipend to $25 a month, but also extend this benefit to all non-exempt staff, because we find that we are making calls as directors, supervisors, to employees in all different levels as the method of communication, I guess, is an issue of fairness. I'm feeling that we should be extending this to everybody. So I guess I'll leave my explanation at that. I don't know if Sherry or Michael wants to chime in on any part of this.
Mr. Chairman? Mr. Donner?
Yes.
Have cell phones replace two-way radios? It sounds like that's what's happening.
Pretty much.
Okay, that makes sense. And I see it when I read through the policy, there are certain restrictions on employees that they have to have it with them when they're at work.
Right.
It has to be charged. So it sounds like we're switching over from, as I said, from two-way radios, the handy talkies, or whatever the heck you want to call them, depending upon how old you are. The cell phones are replacing walkie-talkies.
Flip phone for you, Lauren.
I still have mine. I just bought a new one.
I would expect nothing less.
I'm glad I'm consistent.
So the other related thing is then there's an agreement that each employee is required to sign to be eligible for the stipend, which is at the end of this policy. That's the last 2 pages of the attachment, the sample agreement. So anyway, I expected there'd probably be some questions on this, but
So my only, well, a couple questions. So you're increasing the compensation by $5 for a majority of the group. Is that meaningful enough for them, number one? And then it looks like you've got 5 people today who are not receiving it, who will start receiving it. And are those people going to provide you enough value? Like are those people that you are some of the people you're trying to reach and you can't reach them because they don't have access to a cell phone?
I'm not so sure that's the case. I think they do have, I think the case is they do have cell phones, but we're expecting them to be conducting business on them without acknowledging that through some kind of compensation. Now, whether $25 is enough, I guess I can't. I mean, all depends on what kind of a cell phone plan you have, I suppose.
Yeah.
But it's a matter of what we're expecting. I guess we're expecting voice contact and text capability. So it's not necessarily expecting internet connectivity. That's their option. In the other case, for the larger amount of reimbursement, there is the expectation for the internet connectivity, the smartphone capabilities.
Okay. And I'm looking at your policy. So this is only during dedicated work hours, or are you also expecting them to be available after their shift? And are they non-exempt, and are they checking their phone and checking emails or voicemails that they need to actually be compensated an hourly wage for? That's been my only issue that I have really experienced with cell phone stipends in the past, is that non-exempt employee who may be checking voicemails on non-work time that now we need to pay them for that time.
Well, I don't know how you cut that out entirely. I mean, the expectation is that they, if they are called for a emergency response event, a main break, snow plowing, issue with a, you know, a street that needs to be attended to. I mean, there's other situations, I'm sure, in other areas, but we want them to be able to, you know, we need a way to contact them so that they can be, they can respond to that event. So there are going to be cases when we try to contact people outside of normal work hours to come in to report to duty. That's the main reason for having, or one of the reasons for having that requirement, I guess. But I guess in terms of other, we're trying, we've talked about it frequently, about not creating expectation that people need to respond to things or to contact them with, you know, for texts or things of that nature. Again, it's probably somewhat of a gray area, and we have to do as good a job as we can to draw the line, I guess, as to when I guess we're trying to communicate with people through their phones.
And this is Linda. Before the cell phone, when you had those type of emergencies, how did you communicate with them, and what was the expectation for them to be available?
They needed to have a phone so they could be.
So maybe a landline?
contacted.
You called a landline?
Yeah, it was a landline at the time, back in, you know, the previous technology.
Personally, I think you giving cell phone stipends for non-exempted employees is generous. You don't see that at all companies. Some companies do it, some companies don't. That's just my opinion. If you're already compensating them for it, like Robin said, is $5, will that make a difference? Maybe. If you're increasing other benefits, it, again, that part of that total rewards package.
Mr. Donner,
Yes.
that when they respond, you call them in for an emergency. They have call-in pay that's given to them, correct? That they earn. Is that correct?
Yes.
So in my mind, that would cover the fact that they answered the phone.
Okay.
So if you have a snow emergency, so Michael calls a snow emergency and he gets a hold of the street crew to come in via the cell phone. And normally he would have done that on a landline in years past, but they still get compensated for call-in pay above and beyond what an 8-hour shift would be, correct?
Right. I suppose theoretically the call-in pay is to do with the inconvenience of coming in at a unscheduled time.
Yeah, those of us who work in public service are quite familiar with those. So I just wanted that.
Not so much, but not so much tied to the cost of the say the phone or the equipment, so to speak.
In my day and era, it was we had to have a landline.
Yeah.
And Not to say that it's not fair to be compensated for it, but we had one anyway, so I didn't think it was a big deal. The cell phone I see right now is being ubiquitous. I mean, when you got 5 and 6-year-old kids with cell phones, it's like boggles your mind. But at any rate, I'll be quiet now.
The only difference is so many people don't have landlines anymore. I think the way this is drafted, it's a fair policy, and I would even make a motion to approve.
There is a motion by Schuster. Is there a second?
This is Linda. I will second.
Second by Hackbar. Clerk, roll call vote.
Feeny,
Aye.
White,
Aye.
Hackbarth,
Aye.
Schuster,
Aye.
Haig.
Motion carries. Excellent. Moving on. The next item before us is discussion and possible action on longevity pay as a returning benefit. Administrator Donner, I'll kick this off to you.
Okay, longevity pay, I guess, as I outlined in this report, staff report, is as far as the village staff goes, was something that had been extended to employees up until about 2014, from what we can tell from the records. Was eliminated in 2015, more of out of a budget necessity or a budget move to, I believe, maybe put back into salaries. It's not clear what the ultimate reason was. It was at the time, as I mentioned, looks like about $9,000 of impact to the general fund. Of course, there was some additional amounts to utilities and the fire, Weston fire at the time. Eligibility for longevity depended on having 4 years of service, and then after your 4th year of service, you would start at an amount of $144 a year. And then there was steps every 5 years of additional $144, and it maxed out at $720. This benefit, the fact that this benefit is no longer extended to employees, comes up quite frequently in discussion for whatever reason. Kind of viewed as a takeaway, if you will. City of Merrill, again, as we were checking around to see what kind of things were being done for employee retention and so forth. City of Merrill reinstituted or instituted a longevity plan for all of their employees. The formula I just described in the body of the report, somewhat certainly a different formula than the one the village had traditionally. Also, I attached the material from the December meeting of the Wausau Human Resources Committee. They had actually revisited this longevity, the prospects of a longevity plan coming back there. Actually, the information in that packet actually dates back to 2019. I did receive feedback from Wausau that they have not yet taken any action on this, and their committee directed the staff to look into more issues or more things besides longevity, and look at longevity as part of a overall package. So I think I made some comments similar to that myself. As I admit to in the staff report here, I probably have some conflicting thoughts about longevity myself. I know it would be something that, from my perception of the staff would like to bring back. It's not a benefit though that applies to everyone, because there would be a waiting period. You're not gonna be eligible for longevity in year one. So I think that was, maybe one of the things maybe tying into a comment we had last time, is that you'd want a benefit to actually be available to all employees.
Except longevity and 1 year are contradictory terms.
Exactly.
Right.
Right.
That's correct. So,
Yeah, and I'm
I mean,
not,
there's a lot of things to talk
Agreed,
about here.
yes.
So, there's a lot of things to talk about
Yeah,
here. How do the thing get structured? Why do you want it? So anyway, I'm gonna stop my comments at this point and throw it to the committee here.
this is Linda. I think longevity pay is important given the state of our economy and your focus on retaining your workforce. If it's something that your employees have wanted, I think it's something we need to consider and seriously look at, because you're hearing feedback from your staff that that's a valued benefit. So as we're looking at all of these benefits, I think this one might need to rise up a little higher, in my opinion, if it's something that's going to help retain your workforce. And it sounds like it's an important benefit from what you shared with us, from your staff. Yes, it does not apply to everyone, but longevity pay shouldn't, because they have to meet so many criteria. But you're seeing turnover happen a little bit earlier in the millennials. So I don't know if you had longevity in your turnover report. I'm going to look back at that.
I don't recall it being on there, Linda.
No,
What's that?
I don't recall that being on there.
Yep, I don't see it either. I was just curious, from the people who left,
Yeah.
what was their longevity?
Mhm.
Oh, yeah, okay. Other than the 9 that retired, I guess, they're
Yeah, outside of the 9 that
Mhm.
retired.
Mhm.
The
pretty
employees
much
that-
20 plus year employees, I would say, on the retirement
And
side.
maybe you do a newer scale that you pay out so much after they're here a year. And again, depending on your longevity scale, and maybe the next amount is after 5 years. And then it's 10 years, or 1 year, 3 year, you know what I mean? Maybe you scale it instead of an annual
Yeah.
payment, just
Right.
to change it up a little bit.
Well, yeah, I think generally speaking, that's what we've seen is, and the one I used maybe as, if we were gonna follow one, maybe it would be, maybe first of all, the Everest Metro policy that they use right now, but it's not quite as high of a compensation as our old plan was. I'm not sure we could support the older plan as it is with, in our,
Sure.
as our budget is currently. But, yeah, I think generally they have gone in steps, like with 5-year increments.
Mr. Chairman, this is Lauren.
Go ahead.
I can tell you from working in municipal employment for 30 years, it seems very trivial, but the longevity and vacation increases were one of those things that were on the top of the list, for me anyway, and also the health insurance, I mean, and the retirement. Some of these things that are for younger people are a long ways off, but I think longevity is one of those things. I took it as a Christmas club because it came in November and I had a little extra pocket money to buy presents for my family. And I know that sounds silly, but that's the way it felt to me.
Right.
Mhm. This is Robin. I'm gonna jump on Fred's bandwagon here for a minute. That I do think there's a place for longevity pay if it's structured correctly. But I also think we need to consider this as a total compensation package as well. So as we're looking at market data, this needs to play into that total compensation package as well. And I like where Linda's going. If this is paid annually in this current market, it's pretty easy for somebody to hang on for an extra 3 or 4 months in the year to get their payout versus, you know, having to hang on for another year or two to hit that next milestone. So I think there's a place for it. And ironically, this afternoon, I was having a conversation with one of my current employees at GreenHeck, and he had previously left us and went to the public sector, and he has now returned. And I said, you know, what made you come back? Because he was gone for 13 years. And he said, honestly, he said, I went there for the benefits. And he said, due to Act 10, he said a lot of, you know, what motivated me to take that position no longer existed. So he came back to the private sector. So I do think that this is a differentiator for public sector employees. I think we just need to structure it correctly.
Okay.
Great.
That's my 2 cents.
So along those lines, I guess structuring correctly, what would constitute that, I guess?
Well, again, I think instead of an annual stipend, you know, are there different milestones that we need to consider? Is it more of a tiered payment? And I'm not as familiar with longevity pay because I've always been in the private sector. My only exposure is on this committee. So I'm open to other ideas on this as to what other municipalities may be doing.
Yeah, I didn't have it when I was at Aspirus, but at Bone and Joint, they had it, and they call it Service Award Anniversary Recognition. And so when I joined here, people love their pins, like that you put on your badge. I was like, what? So they get a Service Award Recognition pin. It's like $4 after a year. And then after 5 years, then they get what used to be dollars. Then all the tax laws changed about people had to pay taxes on everything, and it was more of a dissatisfier. We converted it to points to our company store that they can purchase all sorts of stuff, and then they avoid taxation on it. But ours is 1 year they get a pin, and then every 5 years after that, they get a monetary gift of points. So 5 years is hard to reach these days with the millennials. I mean, you're seeing them leave the workforce typically around 3 years. We're lucky if we can keep them longer. It's awesome. You know, if we would ever change our policy here, I would probably add another layer after 3 years and then go 5 and then every 5 years after and make it worth their while every 5 years.
Yeah, increase that stipend. Exactly. That
think
carrot's
our
got to get a little bit bigger.
Mr.
Yeah, our
Chairman,
large value after 35 years, I think, or 30 is $2,000. So it's quite a bit. It's a big chunk.
Yeah, it's worth sticking around for.
Yep.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
now we're lowering it to 3 years, forgetting what it is. It's longevity pay. I recognize millennials change jobs frequently, but I don't know that lowering it to 2 years by 2 years is going to change anything. It's termed longevity pay for a reason, so let's keep it longevity pay.
All right. Thank you.
Of course, I'm hearing that it's hard to hit that 5 year, that 5 year target.
Well,
But-
that's just for my workforce, and I've got over 250 staff. You have 40, so it would be nice
Okay.
to just kind of evaluate when your turnover starts. Are you seeing it after 3 years? Are you seeing it after 7 years? Like, what are the trends year to year of the people who have left I would maybe look at that to help benchmark where you'd want to start.
Sure. Well, I can say traditionally we haven't seen that, but I'm not sure that's gonna continue going forward, but who has the
Mhm.
crystal ball on that, right?
Right?
Okay, well, so you would,
Mr. Chairman?
go ahead.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Mr. White.
I move to recommend additional review be done and longevity evaluated as a priority among employees and or part of a compensation study.
I would
There is a
second that.
motion by White and a
I
second
would,
by,
yeah, but Robin Hank, I would second that.
okay. Clerk, call the roll for a vote.
Me,
Aye.
White,
Aye.
Hackbarth,
Aye.
Schuster,
Aye.
Haig.
Aye.
Motion carries. And then the second to last item of new business, amendment to the contagious temporary illness policy. Administrator Donner, I'll let you start.
Okay, this is the item that we added on to the agenda for some discussion tonight. I guess I really felt I probably should have had this on there originally, but events over the holidays, kind of, it's like slapping somebody across the head, I suppose. Maybe we've had things a little bit going too smooth here, but I know we've had some people that have been having symptoms of illness over the holidays, got tested and so forth, and I guess hearkening back to our policy that we adopted back in 2020. At the time when we adopted the policy, this what we call contagious temporary illness policy, I know we put that together. We probably didn't even meet as a committee because that was when the initial restrictions on COVID were put in place. So we worked with the board on getting this adopted. The model on this came, I believe, from a similar policy done in Sheboygan County. And also, this is the same thing that Everest Metro adopted in form anyway. It includes specific provisions of what was called the Families First Coronavirus Response Act back in 2020 for some emergency medical leave and extended family medical leave or emergency family medical leave, which are since expired. So those are no longer in effect. The policy did stipulate that those were going to expire on December 31st, 2020. Now, through 2021, we really haven't had any significant issues, but I guess over the holiday, we seem to have had a spike in people having some symptoms, including yours truly here. So earlier today, I met with the director team and we tried to review what we really should be doing in these, and as people are reporting symptoms or they're being exposed potentially to other coworkers or to family members. I think we've been pretty good in terms of following the recommended protocols. I know that there's been some people that have had some positive tests, and people get concerned about where they are with I guess their PTO and certain other leave that might be available to them. They can tap into their medical leave bank if they're off for more than 3 days. We haven't required as part of this policy a recommendation or a doctor's excuse to be away from work when these situations have occurred during the pandemic. So I know that one other neighboring community had extended their the ability for people to use emergency paid sick leave locally under the old or the original act. Emergency paid sick leave was something we were required to offer in addition to any other paid time off. But we were not going to be compensated for it other than we got some break on Social Security or whatever the proper term is, the deduction that has to be taken.
It was the, Keith, it was the employer's portion of the Social Security tax.
Right, okay, so it was, so in the end, that was a small amount. And we didn't have, how many people would you say had been extended any benefits from that, Sherry?
I would say 4 to 5 village employees. And I know there were also some Everest Metro employees as well.
Okay. So, I guess I was having some thoughts that maybe we should consider reinstituting some level of emergency paid sick leave, other than what, other than having people rely entirely on their PTO. If we have a situation where somebody gets, say, exposed to a coworker that they didn't know was going to diagnose or as being positive or something like that. Again, we didn't run into any problems necessarily during 2021, but it just seems, and maybe I'm panicking a little bit or something just based on some of the experience we had here just over the last couple of weeks. So there are other places and other parts of this policy that need to be updated. I put together a kind of a modified, a marked up version of this thing. Changing some dates. I highlighted some areas that that kind of point out what we're doing or what we should be doing with our employees. It's already been outlined. Maybe some things that have to be clarified in here, but there's a lot of language that can be stricken based on the previous Families First Coronavirus Response Act. Anyway, I guess I'll lead in then to some other comments that I would be all ears to hear.
Mr. Donner, this is Lauren.
Yes.
Any cost that's incurred by the village on this, is there anywhere that this money is coming from? Is it coming from our American Recovery, whatever the heck that funds are?
Mhm.
That can be used for that? I mean, because I can see this impacting the budget quite heavily, especially when when we're not on our own and not through a federal policy.
Well, I believe it would still fall under it'd be eligible for reimbursement under the ARPA funds. I guess Jess could clarify that for me. We could certainly confirm that. I guess it's even under the old or the original scenario, we were still responsible to pay them those wages. And the only thing that got forgiven, if you will, was that part of the Social Security, the SSI, employer paid portion of that, as Sherry said.
Right, and Keith,
I don't know, is this,
Keith, I do know that was different in the public sector, that they were eligible for more of reimbursement on that, but because we were public sector employees, we were not eligible for the same kind of benefits or reimbursement, I should say.
okay. So maybe I'm misunderstanding some of the criteria here too. That's another part of this. It's confusing as to how much or how the quarantining and isolating requirements. You know, we are able to separate our staff, say in public works and you know, other areas. Although if someone's been tested positive, as far as I know, we're not supposed to be bringing them in, or you know, they're supposed to be staying home under the guidelines that are offered by CDC, which I know that's been a bit of a moving target over time, but
Yeah, it feels like it changes daily.
yeah.
Mhm.
So
It's very hard. It's
So
very
I guess,
hard to stay on top of.
so I guess coming back from the holiday, I'm maybe I'm overreacting. I don't know. Help me out.
Yeah, Keith, this is Linda. I
Okay.
live and breathe COVID every day, working in healthcare. I have unfortunately become the subject matter expert at my work for COVID. I see the hospital stats. You have a right to be concerned. It is spreading. But I anticipate, and so does the hospital and the whole nation, that it will start to calm down over the next 2 weeks as the family and friend gatherings subside. So you'll probably see a spike. I know I've seen a spike here at my work as well, like significant, after the holidays.
Question for committee member Hackbarth. Even though the rate of infections will probably go down in a few weeks,
Maybe.
Omicron is still hyper infectious.
Yeah.
Is that something that we have to worry about going forward?
Well, absolutely. I mean, we've had to worry about it for almost 2 years now. The CDC guidelines for the general population have been significantly reduced to those 5 days. So 5 days of if you're exposed, and then you have to make sure if they're coming in, there's no symptoms, and that they mask appropriately. And I don't know that you require your staff to mask right now or have appropriate masks that they're going to wear, so it's tightly fitted over their nose. So that's one thing you'll want to consider if you're going to start bringing people back that have been exposed and or are recovering from COVID after those 5 days, because you want to make sure they're in a properly fitted mask. The 3-ply masks that go around your ears, they kind of have a little wire on your nose that can kind of squish it down. You may want to consider providing that to them so they're in a properly fitted mask if you're going to bring them in when they're recovered from COVID and their symptoms are improving. Because people are going to want to continue to work, especially if they've used up their PTO.
Okay.
So the guideline we were looking at was, there's one on the Marathon County website. I presume the guidelines come from CDC, but maybe I shouldn't presume.
Yeah, there was are you looking at I haven't looked at the Marathon County one, but because they've been following the state DHS and also CDC, it seems, but maybe they're different.
I guess Marathon County maybe has mostly the Department of Health Services information on there. I think
So
I
Keith, what are
attached
you
that.
specifically looking for? Are you looking for if someone is exposed
Reactivation.
at work, what the contact tracing process should be? What are your main concerns at this time? Because it's like Linda, I mean, we have over 30 cases today just in Wisconsin, in my facility. And
Isn't that
we have
insane?
a very robust policy that, because we have so many different locations and facilities, each facility has a operating level based on exposure rates for that day. And then we have a tracking system in place for anyone who has been in that facility, who they've been exposed to. And then we're tracking quarantine for individuals who have been exposed, as well as reevaluation for that facility as to what operating level that building should be at. So, I mean, I'm happy to share what we have. I'm just not sure exactly, do you need help with an entire policy at this time, or are there certain components of it that you're more concerned about right now?
Well, we reviewed the policy with the staff, with the director of staff this morning.
Okay.
And I guess I admit to some level of confusion as well, just based on what the recommendations are. But I attached in the packet here.
And I apologize, I was in meetings all day, so I have not
that-
yet looked at this, so I do apologize for
So
not.
Michael, I think he has up on the screen right now, the one that's being shared is what this was the document from the Marathon County website, which looks to me like they may have based on DHS information, but this was what we were recommending. These are the guidelines we were recommending people to follow based on if they test positive and then if they're exposed. But in terms of masking, yeah, we have not had a mask requirement. So maybe it's a matter of going back to that for anybody that's been exposed if they're coming back. The mask capability or the mask design, I guess, is something that we probably have not had maybe haven't even looked into. If we're bringing somebody back that's been exposed or been diagnosed and recovering. So
Yeah.
maybe that's just the little nuance we need to be able to cover. I know we seem to have not had a lot of, we'll say, for lack of a better statement, a lot of freak out about this. But obviously everybody has different feelings about this, and they're trying to make sure. I always have to remind myself to be sure we have to be mindful of everybody's situation.
Right.
Do you have any idea what percentage of your workforce is vaccinated?
No.
Okay.
So I guess the one question, I guess, aside from making updates to this policy, which I guess that could come another time. I guess you can certainly look at what's in this packet prior to our next meeting. But I guess the question was whether do you feel it'd be appropriate to entertain extending or putting in place an extended emergency paid sick leave to some level as we start 2022 and for 2022. But neither, I guess your companies probably have not done anything like that from what I'm. Okay.
We did ours because we were covered under the healthcare clause back in 2020. So we were only covered from, I think it was like September 16th till December 31st of 2020. And it was interesting, once we stopped the emergency paid sick leave come January 1, my exposures went down significantly because they weren't getting paid for it anymore. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. Linda, when I was at Mobility for that year, I was there for, I mean, the year COVID, the week COVID hit, I started there. And
boy.
we also fell under the thresholds of, I think it was under 500 employees initially when that first came out. So, yeah, once people burned up their 80 hours, miraculously, we didn't have as many issues. Yeah.
Yeah. And the fact now, Keith, that it's the stay home time has been cut in half for if you have COVID, and the quarantine time, if you've been exposed, has been really cut down from 14 days down to 5.
Yeah.
I don't know that you necessarily need to do that pay. Certainly, you have to look at your budget, but the more important thing is to provide a safe work environment for the rest of your staff who are in office. So if you're going to choose to allow them to come back to work after their 5 days, if their symptoms are improving, from an OSHA perspective, to help reduce any significant exposures in your workplace, you really want to institute the mask wearing.
Okay, and are these masks of the quality or the design that you're talking about readily available right now, or
Oh, yeah.
are they hard to come
Yep.
by?
They're just 3-ply disposable masks, so they give you
Are they
3
the
layers
same?
of protection.
Mhm.
And there's lots
Keith,
of opinions on the whole masking, whether they work or not, but in regards to a safe work environment, they're going to say, why didn't you follow the CDC, the DHS, and Marathon County guidelines returning your worker back? You decided to return him without a mask on, and then they exposed 5 other staff. And that's going to become your problem and your work comp exposure.
Mr. Donna, the N95 is the mask that qualifies.
That's the 3-ply that you're referring to?
Well, it's referred to as an N95. And if you're going to have employees come back after 5 days, I think we need to provide them with the mask that we want them to wear.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that the N95 is required. If you look at the appropriate masks on the website, they leave the N95 for healthcare staff or emergency medical staff. So having looked at this like day in, day out, the 3-ply masks for this level are sufficient. The N95s are going to be ones that obviously you're going to have to get fit tested for. I mean, you can purchase a KN95. That's going to give you a higher level of protection, but the N95 is not required under these guidelines.
So those cloth masks you see in the little packages when you go to Quick Trip or some other hardware store or whatever, those are not the 3-ply masks, I take it, are they?
Yeah, you're going to want to get the disposable ones. The cloth masks are going to be those that you're going to machine wash.
Oh, did I say cloth? I guess, but yeah, those are disposable ones. Those little packages are like.
And those have like a little wire so you can pinch them over your nose to provide that. I mean,
right.
There's so many different opinions on masking, but there's actually, I will send it to you after our meeting, a link that talks about masks and how a well-fitted mask can help protect. And again, there are so many opinions on whether these masks work or not, but what they'll look for is, did you follow the guidelines? And I would recommend, I'm sorry.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I think, Linda, you're talking about I'm going to call them the white blue mask that every place is handing out, correct?
Correct.
Yes, okay.
Yep, you can get them at Sam's Club in bulk if you want. We provide all of our, under healthcare, we fall under a whole set of different guidelines outside of this, but we supply masks to all of our staff. And then obviously people working in the OR, they have the N95s if they're intubating patients and whatnot. But the other thing you may want to consider is gathering your staff's vaccination status to help figure out quarantine periods, because now they've increased that requirement to get boosters.
Yeah, I know that's on this guidance that we have been looking at here.
It just might be a good task to do, so you have the data.
So how do we flirt with HIPAA laws in this case?
Yep, so Sherry should be managing this process.
Mhm.
Because Sherry's over HR and has medical records, they need to stay with the medical records. So, sorry, Sherry, I had to do it as well for $250. You can do it. I know you can.
Okay.
I would just send an email out saying, we need to get your vaccination status on record. If you've been vaccinated, please send us a copy of your vaccination card. It will be kept privately in your employee medical file, just so you have it on record. And then you can have dates. You can look at the dates, so that will help with isolation and quarantine guidelines for you.
Yeah, and then we're talking about total compensation packages, but we have offered an incentive for people to get vaccinated and boosted. So anybody who does get their vaccine, they get 2 hours of PTO for each dose, plus another 2 hours if they get their booster as well. So that's also another good way for us to track who is vaccinated and who is boosted, because they have to provide us with a copy of their card to get their 2 hours of PTO in their bank.
Well, that was quite honestly an area I didn't want to have to go to.
We didn't go there either.
Yeah,
You're not alone.
Our rate is only about 40% right now. So yeah. And so again, along Linda's line, as far as tracking goes, we have a really nice tracking document that, Sherry, that might help you as well. I don't know if Linda, that's included what you're going to send, but we've got a really nice chart that we use for, name of the employee who tested positive, where they work, when symptoms started, are they vaccinated, not vaccinated, who did they come into contact with, when do they come into contact? So at least then what the return to work date should be, who you need to contact, etc. So we've got a really nice contact tracing document if that will help you track these positive cases that you may have as well.
Okay. As far as testing goes, are you making employees responsible to go find the testing wherever that may be? And I know testing seems to be one of those things, or test kits seem to be something in short supply lately. Although my wife found one of them, I think.
Yeah, you have to be careful with some of the testing. Just working in healthcare, those at-home tests are fine. However, they're not as sensitive as the PCR, and 9 times out of 10, they have to go get it validated with a PCR test. So they're going to have to schedule one anyway. At least that's been my experience in working in healthcare, is there's a lot of false positives, a lot of false negatives, who knows? But they're always saying you have to get it validated, especially if there was a known exposure.
Yeah, that's our experience as well, Linda, but we have the luxury of having QuadMed right down the street, and QuadMed's doing all of our testing for us. So
You do have that luxury.
Yeah, we're pretty lucky. But I do know DC Everest I'm not sure who's actually administering the testing there. I don't know if that's Marshall Clinic or Spirus who's doing that, but there's several testing facilities locally.
Yeah.
That seems to do a pretty good job.
Yeah.
Well, access to those testing, I think at like local clinics was kind of limited today, from what I can tell. It's out several days.
Is it really?
I think the DCRS program, they have an outside contractor that's helping them with obtaining and delivering samples to the Department of Health Services, from what I understand.
Okay.
Yeah, it is a little challenging, but there's lots of different testing sites. I know Bridge Clinic was doing it. UW Stevens Point is having testing sites.
NTC is
Walgreens.
doing it. Yeah.
We do have our employees find their own testing. We do not have testing on site at our facility. They're required to find it. They'll ask me, can I just do a home test? I'm like, well, you can if you want, but we're going to require the PCR test just to validate it. So they're out a day or two waiting for test results. And the other thing you have to be careful if you have a COVID positive staff member getting, or not, I'm sorry, an exposed employee who is not vaccinated by the new criteria, if they're exposed and have symptoms and test negative, we do not allow them to come back to work if they have continued symptoms. Because I have had employees test positive on test number 5. So be careful with that as well, because we're seeing a lot of negatives, and then all of a sudden, day 4 and 5, they're testing positive.
Mhm. Yeah, I have had that
Or
too.
even
Where
after.
it doesn't show up right away, right?
Right.
And there was a study that the nose test was negative and the mouth test was positive. So you got that to deal with too.
So much fun, said no one ever.
Moving right along.
All right, well. So I'll make, I guess, modifications to the policy just to get it updated to the current situation, eliminating that old language. But at this point, we're not going to propose the additional medical leave. I guess I can certainly bounce out the village board, but it's not your sense that that's something you would recommend.
I would not.
Okay.
I would not.
Yeah. And Sherry, when you're putting out communication to the staff, you can blame the CDC and the health department to say, so that we can better understand isolation and quarantine periods, we need to better understand our vaccination status of each employee. That's what I did.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, I think that takes care of this item unless anybody has additional comments.
I have nothing. Anyone else? All right, let's move on to item 12, update on mechanic recruitment. Director Wodolski?
Yeah, I guess we had brought 4 candidates in for interviews. Today we had a second candidate in then from that 4, we whittled it down to 2 candidates that we brought in for second interviews, which the first second interview was Thursday last week, and we had one today. So I guess be getting together with our fleet lead and other public works staff that were in on the second interview, and I guess hopefully have a recommendation in the next day or two as far as a hiring of filling the mechanic vacancy. So.
Okay.
So hopefully in a couple of weeks we'll be back to full staff.
All right, thank you. Remarks from staff.
This staff person is talked out for today.
Yeah.
All right, any other staff? All right, hearing nothing. Remarks from committee members, starting with Heg.
Nothing from me.
Schuster,
Nothing from me, thank you.
Hackbart.
Nothing from me, thanks.
And just for me, you know, as we talked about a little bit tonight, Omicron is going to be the dominant form and is very, very infectious, even if it's not as lethal as earlier strains of COVID. So I would encourage everyone to mask up again, even if you're vaccine boosted, and do your part. And I am seeking a motion to adjourn.
So
By the way,
moved.
hey, by the way, Mr. Chairman, I have nothing either.
Sorry, Lauren, I thought I got you. My bad.
That's all right. I'm used to it.
All right, so Schuster moves to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Linda.
All right, second by Hackbar. All in favor, please signify by saying bye.
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 Aye.
Bye. We are adjourned at 7 o'clock.